Welcome to the Equity Teacher Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rachael Mahmood. In this podcast, we'll dive into the stories, the voices, and the expertise of incredible teacher leaders who are making a difference through the equity work they do in their classrooms and their communities. Welcome to another episode of Equity Teacher Leader. I am so psyched for today's episode because I get to interview Ms. Tyler Hunt, who has been who's been not only a longtime friend of mine, but also an amazing advocate for everything educational equity, social justice, and STEM. Say hello, Tyler.
Hi, how are you guys?
I want to take a moment to introduce yourselves to us, and then we'll jump in.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just keep it simple. My name is Tyler Hunt, and I am an elementary teacher from Aurora, Illinois. I teach fifth grade. That's my specialty. I started in third, but landed in fifth.
Yeah. And just in full transparency, Tyler and I worked together for how many years? 5 years, 6 years?
I think six, definitely.
6 years together in Aurora, and Tyler jumped over to fifth grade with me for years, and that was amazing.
Oh yeah,
And so I
a
can't
lot of donuts.
a lot of what?
A lot of donuts.
Oh yes, donuts. All sweet moments. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So Tyler, you are just rocking it. I've known you since you started teaching. You've been a teacher now for how many years?
Since 2019. I'm finishing year 7, something
It's
like that.
amazing. Yes. And in those 7 short years, I have never seen another educator just like rise to the top like you have. I mean, come on, you won the A+ Educator Award in our school district a few years ago.
I was shocked that day, literally. That was the last thing I expected during testing.
Happy surprise. First educator in our school to win that. You have been in a variety of amazing roles in IEA leadership. You went to Harvard for a year.
Yes. I had. Why else do you have these cups, right?
Yes, absolutely. For a very comprehensive master's program. I wanted to interview you last year when I started this podcast, but to stay true to the brand, I had to interview teachers that are in the field, and you were sabbatical, doing your master's degree at Harvard, where you actually won an award there. What was the name of that award again?
My award was officially Intellectual Contribution Award.
Love that. And currently, you're in this prestigious fellowship with the National Air and Space Museum as a teacher ambassador. And you're working as an education policy group leader for LEAP Innovations, the Chicagoland Coalition for Human-Centered AI. And you're a senior fellow for Teach Plus. I mean, who is more qualified to have this conversation than you when it comes to AI? There's so many things I've learned from you when you're presenting at IdeaCon, and just things that we need to consider when really thinking about how we're using AI, and things we need to talk to our students about. So I'm excited for that conversation. But before we jump there, tell us just a little bit about your personal journey, your personal story of how you came to this intersection of social justice and STEM.
It's really interesting. So 2020 rolls around. When the pandemic happened, there's lots of different grants that happened. And somehow, I don't even really know how, I became the STEM club sponsor. And so being the STEM club sponsor, I got to work with 3rd through 5th grade students after school. STEM club, we called it icky science. We got really messy and dirty in there. I started seeing a difference between like classroom science versus club science. And I didn't always like it. So how it works in elementary schools, or at least it's been my experience, that oftentimes science and social studies, those are kind of the shortest times of the day that we have, with math and reading being extended. I'll leave that there for you all. But with science and social studies kind of being cut short, I also noticed that in the classroom science and social studies, it was like we were just being left on a cliffhanger. And we wanted to know more. And that was the time of the day where students asked lots of questions. And they were like, well, what does this mean for me? And what about these groups of people? And what about this? And what about try this experiment. And in my mind, I'm like, I want to say yes, but then I just didn't have the time. Club science, I had more time. And so I found myself with our fifth grade students just kind of like asking like them, this kind of this kind of works with our lesson. Do you remember when we talked about X, Y, and Z and like starting to see those through lines and connections? And I think that's kind of my origin story. That's like where like the Spider-Man, like where I was just like bit and I was like, okay, I'm seeing the connections between. There's this thing about when we learn about science, we kind of also learn about ourselves in a really interesting way that I don't think always made sense to me, especially as a student. The sciences and STEM things were, they seem too difficult for me. But now on the flip side, as an educator, I'm like, okay, this is really a really niched area when we can think about how what we're doing in the classroom, the experiments that we're conducting, how they are affecting us, and then having young students or students in general being able to have a full conversation about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we want to actually point out too, we were working in a Title One building
Yes.
at the time. And let's be honest, like, you know, the underrepresentation of Black and Hispanic students in STEM related careers, underrepresentation of families that benefit from Title One services or that are from multilingual families in STEM education, the underrepresentation of women
Oh, yes.
in STEM education or STEM related fields. Just by giving STEM the time, you're doing social justice work right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you speak to some truth there. Sometimes when you're working in a building that's underperforming, there is this huge, extra huge push for reading and writing and math instruction, and something's got to give way because science is less tested and social studies not tested at all. You know, these are the first things that we cut because a lot of times we think that if we just throw more time at
Mhm.
something, like, we could solve it. If we just spend more time teaching reading, more time teaching math, like, these gaps won't be so big, you know,
There's
and then
nothing that a 10-year-old loves more than an extra hour of
of reading and math instruction.
yeah.
Exactly. And so, I mean, just think about how we're perpetuating this inequity in these STEM related fields when we're doing that to students.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to talk about Teach Plus because you introduced me to Teach Plus. I got the Teach Plus bug bite, if that's what you call it, you know, the Spider-Man bite, the Teach Plus
Yeah.
Spider-Man bite. And you're doing so much with Teach Plus and at the intersection of AI too. Talk to us a
Mhm.
little bit about what's going on at Teach Plus with AI. What's going on in the state of Illinois right now with AI? You're in many organizations
Yeah.
talking about these things. Give us like a policy slash briefing slash, you know, current trends update and
I know, I
what
wanna be like on the news, this just in, right? So, I guess, well, to say Teach Plus Illinois, teacher leadership organization, essentially getting everyday educators like you and I to have some voice and say in policy, education policy. So, teaching us how to have strategic conversations, how to understand education, that it is much bigger than our classrooms. And I think that's been a wonderful thing. And we do it in concert with educators from all around the state. So, as it relates to AI, Teach Plus Illinois has had up to this point 3 working groups with AI, and I got to be a part of the first one. I didn't know if Bill would like accept my idea, and this was about in I want to say 2022 when our understanding of AI, like the Open AI model, just was just coming out, Chat GPT, all of that, and I was like, Bill. I think there's some inequity in here. Like, there's something about it. Eventually, it morphed into many and many different things and twists and turns. But between the second and third groups. They were able to establish some legislation here in the state of Illinois, SB 1920. In a nutshell, it requires the state of Illinois, our Board of Education, to issue some K 12 guidelines on AI for all of Illinois. That particular working group with AI, we've released 2 different reports thus far where we've interviewed teachers around the state. And just from hearing teachers around the state, you hear different pockets in different school districts of what everyone is doing. And we likened it to the Wild Wild West, which is what a
ooh,
participant said. And that's exactly what it felt like. This school, we can use AI. This school, we only use here. This school, we have a partnership with this company. This school, we can't do this. This school, we do this. And then I just do this on the side. And it feels really crazy. To say the least. And so I think that's what we were coming at from a teacher's lens. We are professionals. We are we're educators. As our students are learning about this technology, so are we, and we need to be able to have some I don't it's not that I want to say guidelines, I guess some like enduring principles of like where do we start? Because AI is still relatively emerging technology. It is going to change, right? And evolve. And so I think that was the heart of this. And so these AI guidelines from ISB are set to come out no later than July 1st, 2026. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it does feel like the wild, wild west, everyone's
Yeah.
kinda doing their own thing, and it's good to have some kind of direction as to ethical use, right, of AI,
Yeah.
and so, has Teach Plus been the only organization working on these, or are you working in partnership with other organizations, or how's that worked?
Yeah, definitely. So we work in partnership with a group of organizations. That was actually my role this past year, working as the coalition manager. And so, Illinois Digital Educators Association, we helped each other to co publish both of our large reports where we got to interview educators from around the state and kind of survey them. We've also worked with school librarians. We've also worked with oh my goodness. I can't think of everyone and I don't want to falsely name someone, but at the end of all of our reports, there's a group of educators. And what I love about it is that it's not just your traditional we didn't even use the word teachers. We said educators because we wanted to be inclusive. If you are working with students in some capacity, you have a right to say something. We have a right to be concerned about this and be concerned about how this is going to be legislated.
Interesting, and so the LEAP coalition,
Oh yeah.
that is also in partnership, or how does that play into?
So Leap is a little bit different. We work alongside of Leap and they have like their own coalition and we kind of exist in their coalition as well. Their human-centered AI coalition, it's like a Chicagoland area and so you have different administrators, different organizations, ed tech as well, nonprofit, and we kind of all come together once a quarter and we just have these conversations about what is our experience at our different levels, what's working, we talk about different strategies for educators for different ed tech companies. And then something that's really been cool is we've gotten to have students come in and hear their perspective as well. So I would say we are all kind of orbiting the same space, working and kind of walking together. And the reason I love this idea of a coalition is that no one's like hoarding their ideas. If there's something that I am working on, I can go to the folks at Leap and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about this. Can I talk to someone? Can we figure this out?" If something is happening in Teach Plus, I can say, "Hey, Teach Plus Leap is doing this. Like we got to show up to this event and we have to talk." There is cross collaboration in a really beautiful way, and I like that I can have in a small way, some sort of role in both organizations and being able to connect them so that they're not doing the same thing separately, they're together.
I don't think your role is that small. It's more like medium to, like,
Ah,
semi-large, right? Well, no, that sounds amazing. Thank you for clarifying all of that. I think it's important for educators, everyday educators, to understand like what's going on at all these different levels because those policies that are going to come out July 1st, they're going to govern what decisions our school district are making, which are going to
yeah,
come down and govern the decisions that we make in our classrooms. And it's important to understand where they come from. So that way, when things are relayed to us, information relayed to us, we're not just, like, upset, like, "Who made this decision? Where did this come
yeah,
from?" But being reinforced again to say, "Hey, teachers,
yes,
teacher leaders
mhm,
were there making some of these guidelines and designing it. It didn't just come from this abstract group from above
oh yeah,
who are not practitioners." And I feel like that's reassuring to me as an everyday educator that knowing that teachers were at the table. Yeah, they brought the table, they brought the chairs,
yep,
they started this mission,
yeah,
which is the greatest thing about Teach Plus is that it's teachers that are actively enrolled in schools, working in classrooms that are driving these policies, and then it's peace of mind for the rest of us, like, they were part of this. Alright, so you mentioned IdeaCon a few times, and so we have to jump into your IdeaCon presentations.
oh boy,
So lucky to have been able to attend some of your IdeaCon sessions and to, really talk with you at IdeaCon about your sessions and to see some of your sessions at the Belonging Conference the week before. And I've learned so much from you about ethical
mhm,
use of AI and social and environmental justice considerations when using AI.
yeah,
Um, but as a teacher, I'm like out of time. I'm out of energy. I'm out of
Yeah.
capacity. I am burnt to the bone some days. And I'm like, it's just so easy to just put stuff into Gemini, put stuff into chat, put stuff into my new favorite cloud, and get some nice outputs that
Yeah.
I can use, whether it be an email to a tricky parent or a lesson plan that I just want it to be like more engaging,
Yeah.
or a quick quiz I need on something where I can't find or spend the time searching for stuff. It felt so good to do all those things. And I started listening to some of your presentations, and it made me really rethink, how I'm using AI. And so
Yeah.
can you share with us the actionable things, 3 things that educators should be thinking about when using AI, the social justice side of it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I also got to listen to your presentation at IdeaCon, so awesome. I learned a lot from you too. We have to
Nothing
give
about
each other
AI,
time.
but thank you.
It's our way. So, when thinking about teacher lens or like what does this look like for an educator, there are three things that I'll talk about, and I think the first one was most important for me, and it's more reflective. It's why AI, something we always talk about in education, like our zone of proximal development, that ZPD, right? And I think about it in terms of when I am sitting down as an educator and I'm focused so much on an output that I often lose like the input part of it and asking myself, okay, I have something, like, what do I need? What am I trying to create? Right. And with this idealized thing that I'm trying to create, how much of it can I actually do myself? What do I think an AI tool will help me with? And another thing to consider, like, is there a person that I can go to? Something that I've heard and that I really do believe in, don't sit with AI alone. I think that as educators, we have to be comfortable like going up to our teacher colleagues in real life, IRL, instead of turning to an AI tool. And though it may seem efficient, I think it's really necessary for us to sit down and just say, again, what am I trying to do? Um, and I also think this is another interesting aspect of this. When we sit down alone with an AI tool, something that we find or that you'll find is that there's no disagreement, there's not any friction. And so, in an effort to have teachers collaborating more, because I feel like AI creates this sort of collaboration deficit where we are not collaborating with each other and we are giving out these polished outputs and they seem cool, but we're not really talking to each other about them. And so, when we don't sit with AI alone and we have another educator in the room, we create the human aspect of like compromise, of conflict, and saying, "Oh no, let's go back to our guidebook," or "Have you seen this article?" or "Have you looked at this research?" or "Maybe we should go ask this teacher."
Makes that makes so much sense, because so easy sometimes as an educator to just, like, close your classroom door,
Yeah.
right, and just do your thing, and to be productive and effective, we just kinda get into our zone, and you're right, when I turn to AI, we're losing everything we gain
Yeah.
from collaborating with our teams. That's really pointed.
Yeah, and
What
I think
else?
there's an interesting aspect to this to the previous one I was just talking about. It's okay for us to be wrong as educators. I think that's a really great thing that we don't always talk about. I'm wrong sometimes, and I need my colleagues to come and step in and say, "No, that's not okay." Anyway,
Right.
just putting that out there.
Or, you know, how about you take this output and, like, what can we add to it to make it better? Like, have you considered this or that? Or, I mean, it can even like influence the way we prompt or other things like that.
Agreed. You're reading my mind. So the next strategy has to do with exactly how we prompt. And it's something that I think that is really important. Words matter. So this is something that an educator can do. So if you're using an AI tool for any length of time, I think something that's really important is to just kind of track the prompts that you're putting into it. Maybe you're looking for a different type of lesson plan or a certain learning strategy or an SEL strategy or something like that. I think it's really interesting to just write those down somewhere, put them somewhere in a notebook, and then at the end of the week, kind of come back to them. And after you have those prompts, it's interesting to see like what you started out with as a prompt and then what you ended up with in teaching your lesson or maybe helping to present something or coming up with some sort of brainstorm. And with that, you see, or you can begin to see, or kind of have a reflective conversation with yourself about how if you would have changed one word, if you would have changed a couple sentences, you would have got a completely different output. You would have gone a different
Explain
direction.
that to me a little bit more. What do you mean if you change one word, you can get a different output? Give me an
Okay.
example, like for a teacher, just like, okay, I'm trying to make a lesson or make a quiz or something.
Okay. So there's a difference between if you type into an LLM, any large language model like ChatGPT, for example. Um, so if you put a particular prompt into an LLM, if you, for example, say generate a fifth grade lesson plan on forces in motion, you'll get one output. But if your prompt says generate an exciting and project based learning lesson on forces in motion for fifth grade students who represent, you know what I mean? You'll get a completely different lesson plan, a completely different output. And I think the words that we put into an LLM, even if we're just typing, they really matter because changing two words, changing from engaging, changing to project based, changing even like our grammar and how we naturally speak can generate something different. And I think it's always good because I'm one who values like your process. So your draft and how you kind of iterate with AI over time. I think it's interesting to see what you start with and then what you end up with, and just seeing how language can simply change your final product and essentially change an outcome for students as well.
That's really interesting too, because I think sometimes we think some words are synonymous.
They are
And
not.
so we think that like if we use design, generate, write, create, they feel
Mhm.
synonymous, right? And we put that into our prompt. We think that would generally get the same thing out, but that
Yeah.
one different input can completely change the output.
Yeah.
Wow, that is definitely something we need to consider, and just how important it is to be very specific, so that way we don't continuously waste, the model, like being like, "Oh, that's not exactly what I wanted. Oh, let me try to tweak this. That's not exactly what I want. Go tweak it again." But being specific in that initial prompt will
Mhm.
mean that we can reduce the amount of usage. All right.
Uh,
Any other strategies for us as educators or considerations when looking at AI with that social justice lens?
yeah. So the last strategy that I have for educators is again more philosophical, more reflective, but necessary. It is about productive struggle. If you're an educator, even a pre service educator, maybe even a parent, we've all heard the term productive struggle. And productive struggle is grappling with difficult tasks and persisting through them to achieve some sort of mastery. But of course, with educators, we will teach it, but we don't always practice it. We want our students to strive. We want them to just keep going and you can do this, and we're passing out stickers and we're doing pencils and we're giving out all the stuff, but we don't like to engage in that productive struggle ourselves. And I think when AI is added into the equation, we're using these tools to give ourselves finished or finalized, polished outputs. What we are essentially doing, we are outsourcing or like giving away a piece of ourselves. So, outsourcing essentially it is offloading or transferring aspects of someone's personal life or different things to other people, organizations, right? So, offloading could be having a personal chef. The task that you have is cooking, but you're busy or you're living your life and you have someone do it for you. And so when it comes to creating lesson plans, creating content, even like you said, having an email that's difficult to draft to a parent and you're like, "Ugh, I don't want to do this cognitive effort, that struggle that we have of thinking about it. How do I say this? I don't want to sound like this. I want to make sure that I include this, right? Or even in lesson plans, I want to make sure I include this standard. I want to make sure that I'm being culturally responsive and including all of these different things. That mental effort that happens, that stamina that's required for like deep thinking, when we give that over and we just prompt it out, we're outsourcing a piece of ourselves. I don't think we should give that power away. And so productive struggle is where learning happens for students, but it's also where learning happens for teachers, and we have to sit in that. We have to sit in the fact that some of our best ideas, they are not going to happen in like 5 minutes sitting with the machine. Some of our best ideas, and you and I know this both, have come from going to team meetings and sitting down and agreeing and disagreeing, meeting with other teams and seeing what they've said and coming back and then trying out the lesson and then thinking, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And then trying it again next year. That struggle to make sure that we are not throwing a blanket over education, but we are trying to make education fit our students is what we live in. And though that tension can feel very heavy sometimes, I think it is something that we educators should wear with a badge of honor. And who knows them better than us in the classroom? The machines just don't compare, you know?
Yeah, and I think you just hit the nail on the head too, and you're like, we teach students
Yes.
that productive struggle is how we grow and learn. But as educators, we're always looking for the most efficient and easiest way to get things done. And we may be missing the most effective or impacting way to do something in terms of efficiency, whatnot. And so, yeah, no, it's really great points that you make. All really good considerations. Just to recap, we had, let me see if I got everything here. To recap, don't sit with AI alone. That collaboration is important, and that when we use AI, we need to go to our team before, during, after, to make sure that, we're looking at all the different sides, and the machine side is just one side of
Yes.
that collaboration, that we need to be really careful in our prompting, because just changing words can change the entire prompt. And try to be as specific as you can in your prompting so that you're not wasting resources on reprompting, revising. And then finally, this idea of like, it's okay to sit in some productive struggle before we turn to a machine to look for the efficient way, because sometimes that's how we learn and grow. And maybe we need to spend a healthy amount of time doing some productive struggle before we turn to a machine, or after, maybe we get a brainstorm instead of something completely written and then we sit with it. But it sounds like AI is our thought partner. It's not a replacement of our thinking or our tasks or of our humanity.
Yeah. I like to think of it also as like a first draft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Or like maybe you do the first draft and it's like the editor, you know? Like it can kind of go both ways, right? As
Yeah.
long as it's a part and not the whole, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great strategies. So, those were some really great strategies for educators and just some ethical and social justice considerations for using AI. What about for students? I know you said some schools are using AI with students, some schools are not letting students use AI, but should we all be teaching students about AI and how to use it, whether or not they are using it? What are your thoughts about that?
Yes. So I always like to frame AI as emerging technology. So it is changing often. And just because it's changing doesn't mean that we kind of stick our heads in the sand and act like it's not happening. It is happening. And so I think just to make sure that our students are prepared for whatever their careers and lives look like post secondary, I think we have to prepare them and have the AI conversation. Not talking about it feels irresponsible. But when talking with students about AI, coming from a STEM and social justice lens, there are three things that I think are important. This is not comprehensive. These are just my opinions. So
There are
we'll just
many
go.
things that are important, but let's just stick to 3 for time's sake in this podcast.
Right, right. So the first thing that I think is important to talk to students about is the back end of AI. When I say the back end, I'm saying the things that we don't see or that we're not thinking about. So when we are having our prompts, we're using AI tools, we're clicking on the little magic wands, or we're making images, all these things, they seem really cool and fun. But there's something that's happening in the background that is enabling this technology to output these things seemingly instantaneously. So I think talking to students about the human and environmental costs of AI. So the water, the carbon, the land footprint, like data centers being built, water being used, and where's this water coming from? Also thinking about things like e-waste. So all of these AI infrastructure, these technical pieces, well, they're going to be outdated. And so then we're going to have to replace them and get new ones. I think that's important. It's like the fast food effect, right? When you go to any fast food place and you order your food, you're like, I got my food. But there are so many people who are back there. Someone's on the fries, someone's on the salt, heavy on the salt. someone's flipping a burger, like there's so much happening. And I think you have to teach students that so they can view AI from a lens of a human centered lens, and then also from a lens of social justice of who is benefiting and then who is suffering by what our daily use of AI.
No, and that's fast food reference is such a great reference because for efficiency and money's sake, fast food is easy, right?
Yeah.
But the health implications that come
Ooh,
from a life of eating fast food, that's a huge impact, and as well as like where does this fast food come from? How is it cooked and all of those things, the back end. That was a great analogy. And I think an analogy that kids can relate to
yeah.
because, they love fast food, but then they're also told like, "Hey, that might not be the healthiest option for you to do every single day all the time," right? I had no idea about the environmental impact and just how big it is with
Yeah.
the use of AI, and because this is our children's future, and they're gonna have to live in the towns with the data centers, they're gonna have to fight for the water resources as they get older. Are we gonna use water to make sure that people have access to clean drinking water? Are we gonna be using it to cool data centers down? That is a huge implication of AI. So I think that carbon, water, land footprint, is really important for them. And then they can make ethical decisions like, is this worth using AI, or is this something
Yeah.
that'd be better to do the productive struggle, or is this something that'd be better to collaborate with my peers on? Does it take less of a water footprint or carbon footprint if I like, search something up versus Googling something versus AI? Like, is it like progressively more, or how does that work? Do you know?
I don't know everything about it, but from what I've looked at, from what I've studied, image generation, that's very costly with just how AI is being used. So that has a big footprint.
So think again before image generating.
Yeah. Just draw. Contact a local artist.
Use Canva without
Yeah.
the AI tools.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So that's something that's a great thing to mention. Whether or not your school district's using AI, you can talk about the climate justice, the environmental justice, the social justice impact of what it does on the back end. What else you got for us?
I also think that students should learn about the user experience with AI. So AI is democratized, largely accessible. There are some issues with that. But there's a difference between a free account versus a paid account of any AI tool. And essentially, students will get, or anyone will get a different answer based on what they can afford. And I think from a social justice lens, it kind of mirrors this, social economic status polarization that we have and that we experience. And it also kind of amplifies a digital divide. Again, having access to a tool, having money to the latest version of the tool, and then another layer about like how you are even using the tool. Are you using it well? If I can I backtrack just a little bit? So, when backtracking a free versus a paid account, that is something that I think students should really, really consider. Because imagine I'm on a free account, you're on a paid account, right? We shouldn't do this, but let's just say like we're gonna put some work in there, right? We're not gonna check it. We're not gonna do, we're not gonna do all the ethical things. We're just students, we're in a bind. We put our work through some AI tools. Because I'm using a free account and you're using the paid account, or vice versa, however that was, we're gonna get two completely different things. And I think that right there should make us all go, using an outdated version, but versus an updated version, the updated version will be trained on more things on the internet or different sources, internet sources. And so that's pretty interesting. And I don't know if students or educators always consider that. Another thing with knowing how to use AI well, I think it relates to this idea of a user experience because it's one thing if I know that I can use AI as a first draft or I can use it as a thought partner. If I am taking like these ethical considerations because I'm a student and I've been taught how to do these things, and I even take it a step further and I'm also citing this AI use. There's a difference between that use that is strategic and has to be taught to students than a student who is just, okay, well, like I got the first paragraph. I'm just going to use AI to like do a second paragraph. And then it's easy to see that, okay, they clearly use an AI tool. They don't know how to use it well. And I think that's really important for educators, that user experience, it has to be taught. and our user experience is different on what we have available to us.
Yeah, I got a great connection to that. Anytime I put a filter on my photo, my kids, my own children are like, "Mom, like that's so AI
That.
generated." They can be like, "That filter is like so like noticeable, right?" And then
Yeah.
if I do the filter, but I just do it like lightly,
Oh, yeah.
so it still kind of looks like semi-real, just polished, then
Yeah.
it's less noticeable, right? But I'm still using a filter, but it just like spruces up me a little bit, but you can tell it's still me. They're less likely to make a comment. But if I
Yeah.
use a strong filter, they
Oh,
know
yeah.
right away, they're like, that's fake, And then I'm assuming everyone's thinking what's underneath is way uglier because I had to use such a strong filter. And so like I think about that with like your essays and stuff like that. If there's like a hint of authenticity in there,
Yeah.
even if there was like an AI help in the brainstorming or there was an AI help on the edit, people still are more likely to believe it's you.
Mm.
But if it's completely AI generated, it's like the kids calling out the filter, like, oh, that's AI. And so the first thing they do is they disregard it. And they're like, well, there's no validity here because this person just used AI.
Mhm.
And so even if your thoughts went into the prompting, if the whole thing just looks AI generated, it's almost like you lose the credibility.
I can understand that. As
Kids may not realize that, who
mm,
weren't taught, like, this is the correct way to use AI, right? So they actually get a
yep.
disadvantage because they weren't taught how to use AI, and kids who were taught how to thought partner with AI or to use it as an enhancement tool get seen as authentically being smarter.
Whatever that means, right?
Yes, but I can see it, and I've seen it in lots of things, like even everything from when we review applications to reviewing letters of recommendation. It's almost like if you can tell something was ChatGPT, it's like we just put it to the side and disregard it because it could just be totally fake.
Mhm. I hear you right there. The word fingerprints came to mind as you said that. We all have our unique fingerprints, and I wonder if it can be communicated with students that our work, any work that we turn in, it should have our fingerprints on it. And we lose those fingerprints when someone else or something else is doing our work for us.
Yes, this is very true. All
Yeah.
right, give us your last strategy. What is
All
it? What
right.
should we be talking to students about when it comes to AI?
Well, our last strategy begins with a story. The elementary in me always loves a story. So, when I was younger, I would not eat the crust on my sandwiches. I don't know why, but such is life. And when you don't eat the crust, you don't experience the full sandwich. And so, the innovation and things that are happening and benefits, that's great. But also things related to mental health and environmental costs, those things are important to learn too. I think we have to have students getting a fuller understanding of AI, the benefits and the cost of it, so that they can have well rounded conversations about AI.
That's great. And that really gets to their criticality of like when to use it, when not to use it. And when I do use it, my understanding that the information coming back could be biased in some way, or
Yeah.
it could be inaccurate in some way, or it could potentially have thoughts or opinions that I may not agree with.
Yep.
Right, and then I'm turning it in as my own, having that human lens before using it to make the decision of should I or shouldn't I in this particular situation.
Yeah.
While I'm using it, while I'm prompting it, consuming the information that actually is coming back and using the criticality to evaluate it. So eat
I
the full
also
sandwich.
Yes. Like conversationally too, when students are talking about I think you should be able to be like, this part was good, this part was bad, that sort of thing. I think we just got to have a fuller understanding. Yeah.
I definitely get that, and I think, again, it humanizes the
Yeah.
experience. Like, if the human element I feel like that's the thread that's been through every single thing you've shared today, every strategy has been, where is the human element in AI? Where is the human responsibility before, during, and after the
Hmm.
prompt? Without the human aspect, it's not ethical, it's not socially just, it's not a good tool. Like, we can't just defer to the machine and trust that the machine is going to do everything for us. And that's what we need to teach students. That's something we need to be critical of as educators. Just love all of the strategies that you have shared today. Everything has just been so deep and just really meaningful considerations for our students, for ourselves. And I know that you've created something to help educators. And if they've made it this far into the podcast, they deserve to get a copy. Tell us a little bit about that before we get to our final question.
Yes. So, something that I have created is an AI book. It is essentially a workbook for students and teachers to kind of look under the hood of AI. Being an elementary teacher, I've often heard my students say, like, that's so AI. And you ask them questions, you're like, so what is AI? And you try to explain things about machine learning, and sometimes it's lost in translation. And so this really started as a grad school project for me back at the School of Education. And it kind of morphed into how can I help teachers and students have these vulnerable conversations about AI? And again, thinking about just work with Teach Plus and understanding that teachers and students across the state, they all have different levels of knowledge. And so with this piece of technology that is still emerging, how can we all learn together in a fun way where no one feels judged? And so with the workbook, you will find crosswords, there's puzzles, there's things, and it is called Irreplaceable and helping students to understand like the unhackable human factor that AI often tries to replicate. And just empowering students that these things that we've talked about productive struggle and your ability to sit down with another human and your ability to endure just tension. And that's what makes us uniquely human. And students will be able to kind of walk through that in this workbook. There's stories, it's 4 chapters, lots of fun.
So you're going to give us a free chapter,
Yes,
right?
you get
Correct?
chapter 1, all yours.
Chapter 1, a free digital download it in the comments of this video so that you can get access to that, just something to engage with your students. And hopefully the full workbook will be out soon, right? We'll be able to buy it on
Yes.
Amazon.
Yes, very soon, very soon.
All right, we're super excited about that. I ask all of my season 2 guests this one final question. If
Mhm.
you could redesign school from the ground up, or if you could rewrite like one rule or one norm of what traditional education looks like for us now to make it more equitable or socially just, what would you do? What would your school look like? What aspect would it have? Yeah, tell us about that dream school of yours.
Yeah, there's so many things. I'll pick just one. I thought of like 10 different things. Central Air, of course, is the first one anyway.
We just got central air, so, we're living in the life of luxury now.
Right? That's a must, that's a must. But thinking about STEM learning and thinking about that in terms of like a dream school, something that I really wish could happen or could be an experience for all students. Again, earlier I talked about science and social studies being like the shortest part of the day. I really wish that STEM learning could be embedded into all of our into a lot of our curriculum, into what we do, that there's more time taken up for it. But more specifically, for as students get older, I really wish that STEM courses were just were more accessible, and they were required for students to take. Now, I know the graduation requirements, they're getting kind of crazy, but I think STEM courses can often be exclusionary because it's thought that, only these types of students can have this, or you got to have this prior knowledge, and you got to be super motivated, or you got to be smart, whatever that means. I'm not sure. I think STEM it's not an end in itself, right? I think it's a means to an end. Going through these different, models of thinking and processes of engineering and designing and drafting and iterating and hypothesis and all of these things, that process in and of itself, I think that's beneficial to all students. And so what happens when you have a student who goes through K-12 and they don't get that experience? Like, I think we're robbing them of a very important thought process that they'll have to engage in when they are adults. And if we don't teach them that, I feel like we're not preparing them for the real world.
Yeah, I mean, simple things as like the other day, my Wi-Fi went out, and like, how do I problem solve
Yeah.
what I can do before I just call for help?
Mm.
Or, something's not working in my house. I mean, these are all like STEM issues, right? I need to fix
Yeah.
something. I need to solve something. I need to build something. Being a homeowner, having a job, like being a mom, there's or a dad or a parent, like there's so many times in your life where you're problem solving something related to science
Yeah.
or technology, all of it.
Yeah, and then I think from a critical lens as well, like when you're thinking about what you are designing or what you're making or what you're doing, what your solution is as well, I really think it's important for you to consider that like with other people, right? Collaboration is the big part too. So it's so easy for, a student to design something and think, I think this is great. But then you get feedback from people and they're just like, oh, you should probably do this. And you should probably consider that. I don't think that's something that students always get to experience in in an authentic way as well. And I think STEM thinking, STEM learning, this creating, this something that I learned about the 4 Ps of creative learning when it comes to computing, creative computing. So having like a project and something that you're passionate about, being able to play test it and being able to work with your peers, an extra layer of that sort of thing. I think that's necessary too, because it mimics what we do in our everyday lives and what we do in our workplace as well. Sorry, had to mention.
No, so good. And like, I love the 4 Ps. We're gonna have to maybe do a whole extra episode.
Part two.
Um, yes, exactly. Well, this has been just such an enlightening conversation. So many things to consider going to AI. And again, don't know anyone better that I could have had this conversation with. For all the things that you're doing to ensure that STEM education is more socially just and more accessible to all students. And for all the things you're doing on the state level to make sure that AI is ethically used and accessible to students across the state. There is no doubt in my mind, Tyler Hunt, that you are an equity teacher leader. And it's just been great having this conversation with you today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you for having me.
It's my destiny.